Two-time Formula One world champion Max Verstappen possesses huge potential to become one of the best drivers in the history of the sport. Let's take a look at what F1 legends think of Max Verstappen. Mika Hakkinen. After Max Verstappen made his Formula One debut at the age of 17, his meteoric rise became the talk of the town. Commentators and former drivers had differing opinions regarding whether or not a driver of such a young age could handle the pressure of competing at such high speeds and in the most popular series of motorsport. One of the most prominent voices was that of Mika Hakkinen, who won the World Championship twice. The former McLaren driver said, "It's too young because in F1, the risk is high. In F1, you don't go to learn, you have to be ready. F1 doesn't allow you to do too much learning." It was probably appropriate for the Finn to raise the issue, considering that Verstappen was not even old enough to drive legally on the roads in his home country, Netherlands, let alone race in an F1 vehicle with 810 brake horsepower. After winning 2 F1 World Championships, Verstappen has more than proven himself in the sport, and Hakkinen has acknowledged that he was wrong. Hakkinen explained how mistaken he was during a speech at an event, stating, "I criticised him personally when he was entering Formula One, thinking he was too young, but I was really happy I was wrong. Max, obviously, it's great what he has been doing. And time has changed. Young people more and more are going into higher sports categories, including business, including everything. Yes, of course, the teams are much more organised today than in the past. More management, the concept is much more organised. It's a little bit easier to join this big world, but nevertheless, you need great talent and commitment, and great discipline to be successful. Max obviously has done a great job." David Coulthard. Given the challenges that Red Bull will face in the upcoming season, David Coulthard does not feel that Max Verstappen's achievement of a second title in as many years marks the beginning of the Verstappen era. Red Bull will be on the back foot when it comes to research and development, as the team has been penalised with a 10% reduction in the amount of time spent in the wind tunnel and CFD as a result of being found guilty of exceeding the 2021 budget cap limits. As a result of winning the Constructors' title, the Milton Keynes team were always going to have less time than any other team based on the sliding scale for aerodynamic testing constraints. However, the percentage of time that has been given to them has been reduced from 70% to 63%. As a result of this, Coulthard feels it's possible they won't be able to develop a car that can win the championship in the years to come. The former Red Bull Formula One driver, who is now working as a pundit, said the Verstappen era may well be over after 2 titles. Not because he's not a brilliant driver, but he may not have a title-winning car in the coming seasons. Nobody knows that in advance. No matter what happens, according to Coulthard, Verstappen deserves to be considered one of the greatest drivers of all time. He said Max is already among the greats. You'd also have to be a effing idiot to claim he only achieved this because he was in a good car. Even if the RB18 is a particularly competitive vehicle, what Verstappen demonstrated was of an extraordinarily high caliber. The fact that none of Verstappen's teammates has been able to come even close to him over the course of an entire season says it all. Although Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon and Sergio Perez have all demonstrated that they are very deserving Formula One drivers, they do not stand a chance against Max Verstappen in a race for the championship, even in the same car. Felipe Massa. As Max's current contract of around $220 million is set to expire in 2028, Verstappen has stated that he will leave Formula One racing sooner rather than later. After winning his second world title last week in Japan, the Dutchman said, "It can be a long time, but in the end, I don't see myself driving until I'm 40 because I also want to do other stuff." However, Formula One legend Felipe Massa thinks Verstappen will continue racing for a long time. Felipe Massa is a retired Brazilian Formula One racing driver who competed in the sport from 2002 to 2017. He won 11 Grand Prix races and had 41 podium finishes during his career. He also achieved 16 pole positions and was a member of the Ferrari team for most of his career. The former Ferrari driver said, "It's always easy to answer questions like this after you've won a title, but Max just loves racing. He's really not going to stop when he's 31 or 32. Of course, it depends on whether the car is competitive and whether it can compete for the title." Felipe Massa also praised the Red Bull driver and said he believes he can easily be the greatest in Formula One. Massa said, "I can say that Verstappen is in the top 5 of the best drivers of all time, but he can easily become number 1. He has all the necessary talent just like Senna, Fangio, Schumacher and Hamilton." Pedro La Rosa. Pedro Martinez de la Rosa is a former Spanish Formula One driver who competed for the Arrows, Jaguar, McLaren, Sauber and HRT teams during his time in the sport. He competed in a total of 107 Grand Prix during his career. On March 7, 1999, he made his debut in Formula One, and in his first race, he scored a point, making him one of 76 drivers to do so on their debut. La Rosa also has something to say about Max Verstappen. He said, "Max is fantastic to watch. He is smart, aggressive, and fast. Max is all in one. I think Max has everything it takes to become one of the best of all time in Formula One. He has all the qualities, that's for sure. Only time will tell which teams he will drive for and how competitive those teams will be in the next 10 years. But Max has everything it takes to become the best." According to De La Rosa, Max Verstappen is the most talented Formula One driver competing in the sport today. Verstappen and Leclerc were the two main protagonists for the 2022 F1 title. And when comparing the two drivers, De La Rosa held a great appreciation for both of them, but ultimately decided to go with Verstappen because of his experience and maturity in the sport of racing. De La Rosa added, "I think they are comparable in terms of raw speed. They are very fast, especially over a lap, and on top of that, they are very clever. The biggest difference is that Max is much more in control. He really doesn't make any mistakes, and I don't even mean a spin or a crash, but how often do you see him lock a wheel?" Daniel Ricciardo believes Max Verstappen took his biggest step as a driver during their final season as teammates at Red Bull back in 2018, claiming it was then that the Dutchman had a bit of self-realization. Following his victory at the 2022 Japanese Grand Prix, which gave him back-to-back championships, Max Verstappen has been praised for his actions in and out of the car throughout 2022. Red Bull Motorsport chief Helmut Marko even stated that Verstappen made a big step forward in performance. However, Ricciardo believes that the most noticeable change in Verstappen's strategy occurred some 4 years ago when the Dutch driver emerged stronger from a series of early season incidents to rack up podium finishes and race wins as the 2018 season progressed. Asked if he has noticed any changes in Verstappen en route to him doing the double this year, Ricciardo said, "I think he definitely took a step. I think it was the last year I was with him, in 2018. Across the first 5 or 6 races, he was in the wall a lot, having incidents or making mistakes, mostly on his behalf. Then through the year, it's like he just had a bit of a self-realization and a step of maturity, which is also natural, we all go through it. I honestly think that from the middle of that season on, he became a more complete driver." Ricciardo believes the only issue that should be asked about Max Verstappen's future in Formula One is whether or not Red Bull can continue to create a competitive car. Verstappen, who will be 25 years old, is under contract with Red Bull until 2028. Now over to you. What's your thought about Max Verstappen? Let us know in the comment section below.